Have you ever wondered what occurs when the person everyone overlooks becomes the most formidable individual present? Picture entering a location where you're aware that you don't match the expectations others hold. You're not seeking conflict or attempting to demonstrate anything, you simply have a task to complete. This described Monica Traylor's situation on a Saturday afternoon in Springfield, Missouri. As she opened the glass entrance to a neighborhood firearms store, the overhead bell chimed softly upon her entry. Monica's appearance was understated. She dressed in denim pants, a plain gray sweatshirt, with her hair secured in a ponytail. Her look didn't demand attention, yet every gaze shifted toward her, though not welcomingly. The scent of lubricating oil and aged timber permeated the space. Rifle displays covered the walls, handguns filled glass cabinets, and behind the service area, a lanky man in his late 40s straightened his cap before glancing her way. His condescending expression appeared instantly, the type stemming not from amusement but from judgment. Monica detected it immediately but chose to disregard it, having trained herself during her military years. Not every slight warranted acknowledgement, and not everyone deserved her energy. She simply sought to examine a dependable weapon for household security. Before she could advance 3 paces, 2 male customers near the display case spoke loudly enough for her to overhear. "I doubt she knows the barrel from the grip," one remarked. His companion snickered, "She's probably here for social media photos with a gun." Their mockery echoed sharply off the display cases. Monica continued forward, though tension built within her chest. This treatment wasn't unfamiliar, she'd endured scrutiny her whole life, whether as a woman entering male-dominated environments or as a black person in spaces where others questioned her presence. She tucked her hands into her sweatshirt pockets and proceeded, examining the merchandise. The employee eventually addressed her, his tone more challenging than helpful. "Need assistance with something?" Monica briefly met his eyes before focusing on the handgun display. "I'm looking for something compact and dependable, a 9mm would be ideal." The man's eyebrows rose with apparent amusement. 9mm? Are you certain that's not excessive for you? Monica remained composed. "I believe I can manage." One nearby customer laughed again. "Careful, she might outperform you." The clerk smirked and shook his head dismissively. "Let's see our inventory." Monica exhaled steadily, recognizing this wouldn't be a straightforward purchase, but refusing to leave due to the hostile atmosphere. She'd endured far worse conditions. Memories of overseas deployments surfaced, scorching days with sandstorms that felt like sandpaper against skin, nights interrupted by distant gunfire, hours comforting homesick soldiers or those grieving fallen comrades. These experiences were woven into her identity, and no stranger in a gun store would break her resolve. Still, the treatment stung and angered her more than she cared to admit, not for herself, but for what it represented. Regardless of one's sacrifices or service, some people only perceive what they choose to see. She placed her palm on the glass counter, speaking steadily, "Show me that Glock 19. The clerk hesitated before retrieving it from the case. As he presented it, his smirk persisted. She lifted the firearm, assessing its balance and weight. It felt familiar, almost reassuring. The room quieted somewhat, but the mockery lingered, waiting for her to falter and confirm their prejudiced assumptions. Monica refused to provide that satisfaction. Unknown to them, someone was about to enter who would completely transform the situation. The Glock felt cool and substantial in Monica's grasp. She didn't hold it like someone handling an unfamiliar object, but with practiced familiarity. Her fingers evaluated the grip while her posture adjusted slightly, transporting her mentally to the shooting range where she'd stood alongside soldiers who trusted her with their lives. The clerk leaned against the counter with folded arms. "Decent," he said mockingly. "Though beginners typically start with smaller, more manageable options." Monica looked up calmly. "I'm not inexperienced." The man tilted his head skeptically. "Have you fired weapons before?" Before she could respond, one nearby customer interjected, "Come on, sweetheart, tell us your most advanced shooting experience, a .22 at a fair." His friend laughed, elbowing him as if they'd delivered the day's best joke. Monica carefully returned the weapon to the counter. She refused to let them provoke her, though her patience had boundaries. "I've fired considerably more than that," she stated evenly. The clerk raised an eyebrow. "Such as?" "A .380. Monica studied his expression before simply responding, "An M249. That statement struck like a thunderbolt. The corner laughter ceased, replaced by uncomfortable exchanges. The clerk blinked, torn between disbelief and maintaining his arrogant facade. The taller customer leaned forward. "What did you say?" Monica repeated clearly, M249, a light machine gun, belt-fed, approximately 750 rounds per minute firing rate. The store fell silent again, with only a refrigerator's hum filling the void. Then, apparently to salvage his pride, the clerk forced laughter. Well, look at that. Speaking the technical language. Perhaps you've studied some manuals. His words carried sarcasm, but his eyes revealed uncertainty. He hadn't anticipated that response. Monica maintained her composure. She wasn't trying to prove herself to anyone present but wouldn't allow herself to be cornered either. Another patron, an elderly man by the ammunition display, had been observing quietly. He finally spoke. Sounds like she possesses more knowledge than half our usual customers. The clerk shot him an annoyed glance before returning to Monica. Fine, suppose you've handled larger firearms. That doesn't qualify you to purchase one of these. What's your intended purpose? This question cut deeper than the rest. It challenged her very right to be there. Monica drew a steady breath. 4 identical reasons anyone else here would buy one: safety, security, and because it's my constitutional right. Her voice wasn't raised but carried authority. The men at the counter shifted uncomfortably, leaving even the clerk without a ready retort. Monica placed both palms flat on the glass surface. She felt the stares pressing from all directions, silent judgment attempting to force her exit, but she remained planted. She wouldn't depart until she chose to. The 2 men who'd initially mocked her whispered again, but their laughter now seemed smaller and more forced. Something about her tone unsettled them, though they'd never acknowledge it. Monica stood firm inside, her heart racing faster than she revealed. She wasn't immune to the sting. Each word and chuckle wounded her, but she'd spent years learning when to stand steady. The elderly man near the ammunition spoke again, his voice calm and respectful. Young lady, ignore them. Some people fail to recognize strength when it's directly before them. Monica turned slightly and gave him the slightest nod, appreciating his support even while not wanting to show too much vulnerability in that moment. The clerk shifted, suddenly more interested in polishing glass than maintaining his smirk. The corner men appeared restless, anticipating further developments, and they were about to witness them. Before the tension could settle, the door opened again, and this time it wasn't just another customer entering. The entrance bell chimed once more, but instead of anyone noticing the newcomer, the group near the counter maintained their focus on Monica. The clerk, emboldened by their attention, leaned forward grinning. You know what's amusing, he said, his voice carrying throughout the shop. People watch some films, maybe play video games, then visit here believing they're authorities. One man barked laughter. Right, what's next? She'll claim Special Forces experience. The laughter intensified, echoing off gun cases and hunting equipment displays. The sound carried that sharp mockery aimed not just at her but at anyone failing to meet their unspoken criteria for deserving respect. Monica set her jaw, considering returning the Glock and leaving. But departing now would give them exactly what they wanted, proof she didn't belong, and that wasn't acceptable. Instead, she rotated the weapon in her hand, checked the slide with practiced ease, then returned it to the counter as calmly as if nothing had been said. The clerk raised his eyebrows, surprised by her smooth handling, but quickly covered with another jab. Not terrible. Still, if you're purchasing, consider something lighter that won't knock you backward. His friend cackled at that, doubling over. Yeah, man. We don't want her flying across the room when she fires. Monica finally spoke, her tone level. I can manage recoil. Manage recoil? The clerk chuckled, shaking his head. Lady, you probably couldn't load a magazine without assistance. That hit harder because it wasn't just dismissive, it was meant to belittle her at the most fundamental level. The elderly customer by the ammunition glanced at her again, appearing to want intervention but unsure if it was appropriate. His silence spoke volumes, though his eyes carried sympathy. Monica placed both hands flat on the counter, leaning slightly forward, not aggressively, but steadily. I don't require anyone's assistance. Her words cut through the laughter, which dimmed momentarily, but the men weren't finished. Come on, sweetheart, the taller one said. Why not demonstrate? Let's see you work that slide. I bet you'll struggle. The clerk smirked, clearly entertained. Yes, why don't you? For Monica, this wasn't about proving herself to them or even about pride, it was about refusing to diminish. She picked up the Glock again, verified the chamber, and in one fluid motion, operated the slide effortlessly. The sound echoed, a clean, sharp click that silenced the smug grins. A moment of silence followed, then the shorter man forced laughter. Well, anyone can do that. doesn't mean she knows how to use it properly. The clerk jumped in, eager to maintain the mockery. Right, it's one thing to play around here, but this isn't a toy. This is serious business. People get injured when they're incompetent. Monica returned the weapon, her expression calm though her pulse raced. She thought of soldiers she'd trained, men who'd initially doubted her until they witnessed her hit target after target without missing. But she wasn't about to share her history with this crowd. Not yet. The clerk leaned back, appearing satisfied. Tell you what, why not look at pepper spray instead? Might be more appropriate for you. The laughter erupted again, harsher this time, filling the room. Monica's hand twitched slightly against the counter, but she maintained composure. She wasn't there to provide entertainment. The elderly man at the ammunition finally raised his voice, tired of the nonsense. That's sufficient. The room shifted as everyone turned toward him. His voice wasn't loud but carried weight. You boys find it amusing to mock someone you don't know? Perhaps keep quiet and let people conduct their business. The clerk frowned. Relax, Tom. We're just having fun. Doesn't sound like fun, the older man replied. His eyes met Monica's again. Don't let them get under your skin. Monica gave the smallest nod, appreciating the support, but the damage was done. The atmosphere was thick with hostility and mockery, and no amount of calm breathing could erase the sting of being targeted in that manner. Her hand brushed the counter as if grounding herself. She was seconds from deciding she'd endured enough. But before she could make that decision, the sound of heavy boots on the floor announced someone whose presence would change everything. The heavy footsteps echoed against the wooden floor, but the clerk and his companions barely noticed. Their attention remained fixed on Monica, feeding off each other's laughter like predators circling prey. The clerk leaned closer, lowering his voice but not enough to prevent others from hearing. You can keep pretending all you want. The truth is, this isn't your place. People like you enter here trying to prove something, and it never works out. The taller man chimed in, his grin widening. Yeah, better leave the serious work to actual shooters, right? His friends snorted agreement, elbowing him. Monica's jaw tightened. She wanted to exit, to push the door open and let it slam behind her. But leaving wouldn't prevent them from treating the next person who looked like her, who didn't fit their narrow definition of belonging, the same way. So she remained. She leaned forward slightly, her voice calm but firm. You know nothing about me, and you don't need to. I owe you no explanation. The clerk raised his eyebrows. Well, you certainly sound like you're hiding something. Anyone can talk tough. Show me some credentials, then maybe I'll believe you. His challenge stung, not because she couldn't meet it, but because he assumed she needed his validation. Monica straightened, her shoulders squaring. I don't need to prove anything to you. The laughter returned, sharp and mocking. The shorter man clapped dramatically. Ooh, she's tough. Watch out, boys. We have a real warrior here. The taller one added, right, until she drops that thing and injures herself. For Monica, it was no longer just about their words, it was about the eyes in the room. Every other customer watched silently, some with pity, some with discomfort, but none stepping forward except the elderly man by the ammunition. Their silence was almost as loud as the laughter. She remembered nights overseas when her unit doubted her, when every action she took was scrutinized twice as hard. Yet she had outlasted them all, her record speaking louder than any insult. That same fire stirred now, pushing her to stand taller. She picked up the Glock again, her grip steady, her movements fluid. She aimed carefully at the back wall, finger off the trigger, then lowered it again. She didn't need words, her actions spoke for themselves. But the clerk chuckled anyway. Nice little performance. Did you practice that in the mirror? The men roared with laughter again, uglier this time, harsher, as if they needed to drown out the uncomfortable silence creeping in from the rest of the store. The elderly man near the ammunition shook his head. Pathetic, he muttered, not even hiding his disgust. The clerk spun toward him. Excuse me? I said it's pathetic, the man repeated louder. The way you're treating her. I've shopped in this store for years, and I've never witnessed a customer mocked like this. You're completely out of line. The clerk's smirk faltered briefly. Relax, Tom. We're just joking around. No harm intended. Tom's voice hardened. You call that harmless? That's not harmless. That's disrespect, and you know it. The two men near the counter shifted uneasily, suddenly less amused. They didn't like being called out, especially not by someone they recognized. Monica took a breath. She was grateful for Tom's words but didn't want to be defended as if she couldn't stand for herself. She spoke again, her voice cutting through the thick air. "I've faced worse than this. You think you're intimidating me? You're not. You're just showing the world what small looks like." That silenced them. Even the clerk, momentarily, had no comeback. The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Then, before anyone could respond, the sound of a deep voice rolled across the room, "Sergeant Traylor." Everyone turned. The door had barely swung closed behind the man who had just entered. He wore civilian clothes, but his bearing was unmistakable: broad shoulders, upright stance, sharp and commanding eyes. The clerk blinked in confusion. What?" The man walked forward with purpose, his boots hitting the floor like a drumbeat. He stopped just a few feet from Monica. Without hesitation, he lifted his hand and gave her a crisp salute. The store froze. But this wasn't just respect, it was recognition, and it was about to shatter everything those men thought they knew. The salute hung in the air like thunder that wouldn't fade. Commander Richard Holbrook stood tall, his hand raised with precision and reverence, the kind that wasn't done lightly or as some empty gesture. It carried weight and history. The men who had mocked Monica went silent instantly. Their laughter, their smirks, all of it drained away as they tried to comprehend what they were witnessing. The clerk's mouth opened, but no words emerged. Monica blinked, taken off guard herself. She hadn't expected to see him here of all places. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she returned the salute, her hand steady despite her pounding heart. "Commander Holbrook," she said softly. His face broke into the faintest smile as he lowered his hand. "Good to see you again, Sergeant." That word, Sergeant, landed like a hammer in the room. The men by the counter exchanged glances, the bravado slipping right out of them. Tom, the elderly customer, crossed his arms and watched with quiet satisfaction. The clerk cleared his throat, his voice shaky. "Wait, Sergeant? You mean she's actually—" Holbrook cut him off without even looking his way. "Monica Traylor isn't just any veteran. She carried her unit through some of the worst firefights in Kandahar. I watched her drag 2 wounded soldiers out under fire when most people would have frozen. She earned the kind of respect you can't buy or fake." The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Monica felt every pair of eyes on her, but for once, it wasn't judgment, it was shock, disbelief, and maybe even shame. The taller man who had laughed the loudest earlier finally muttered, "No way. You're saying she—" "Yes," Holbrook interrupted again, his tone firm. "That's exactly what I'm saying." Monica looked at him, her expression calm but her chest tight. She hadn't wanted this kind of scene. Her military service was a part of her, yes, but she never used it as a shield. Yet in this moment, she was grateful Holbrook was here to speak the truth others needed to hear. Holbrook turned to her fully now, his voice dropping slightly, more personal. "You saved lives, Sergeant. Men still talk about it. Don't let anyone here make you forget who you are." Monica nodded, her throat tight. "Thank you, Commander." The clerk shifted uncomfortably behind the counter, his earlier arrogance evaporated. I didn't know," he stammered. Holbrook's gaze snapped to him, sharp as a blade. "That's the point. You didn't care to know. You judged her before she even said a word. You saw what you wanted to see." The shorter man from the group muttered something under his breath, but Holbrook's eyes pinned him in place. "Do you have something to say?" The man shook his head quickly. "No, sir." Holbrook's attention returned to Monica, his expression softening again. "It's people like you who remind me what this country stands for. You deserve better than this." The words carried more than just respect, they carried conviction. The entire store felt smaller now, like it couldn't contain the weight of what had just been said. Tom spoke up again, his voice steady. "I knew there was more to you. Glad to see I was right." Monica managed a small smile in his direction. For the first time since stepping foot in the store, she felt something other than anger tightening her chest. She felt seen. But she also knew the moment wasn't just about her. It was about every person who had ever been written off before being given the chance to show who they really were. The clerk rubbed the back of his neck, his face flushed. "Look, I didn't mean any disrespect. I just—" Holbrook cut him off one last time. "Respect isn't something you give only after someone proves themselves to you. It should be the starting point." The room was silent again. The laughter was gone. The mockery was gone. All that remained was the weight of truth pressing down on everyone who had witnessed the moment. But the real test wasn't over yet, because what would these men do now that the curtain had been pulled back? The silence after Holbrook's words stretched long. You could have heard a pin drop between the racks of rifles and glass cases of pistols. Nobody laughed anymore. Nobody smirked. The men who had been so loud just minutes ago now stared at the floor, their swagger stripped bare. Monica shifted slightly, her hand resting on the counter. She didn't gloat or rub it in, that wasn't her way, but the change in the room was undeniable. The same people who had mocked her moments ago now looked like schoolboys caught misbehaving in front of the principal. The clerk tried again, his voice quieter. I didn't realize who you were. If I'd known, Monica cut him off, her tone even, you shouldn't have to know who someone is to treat them with respect. Her words landed harder than she expected. The clerk's eyes darted to the men beside him, as if searching for backup, but none came. They were just as cornered by the truth as he was. Holbrook let the silence linger before speaking again, his voice calm but firm. I've led soldiers into places you can't imagine. Some broke, some thrived. But Monica, she stood steady when everything around her was falling apart. That's the kind of person you mocked. The taller man swallowed hard, his earlier arrogance completely gone. We didn't know. Monica turned to him, her eyes steady. Exactly. You didn't know. But that didn't stop you from judging. The shorter man rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding her gaze. We were just messing around. Tom, the elderly customer, scoffed from the ammunition shelf. Messing around, son? You call humiliating someone messing around? That's the kind of thinking that keeps the world ugly. The man's face turned red, but he had no reply. Holbrook stepped closer to Monica, his voice lowering so only she could hear. You don't need to prove anything to them. You've already done more than enough. Monica nodded, her voice quiet. I know, but sometimes it's not about me. It's about the next person who walks in here. Holbrook gave her a look that carried both pride and sadness, as if he knew the weight of always having to stand taller than the insults thrown at you. The clerk cleared his throat, desperate to regain some control of the room. Well, if you're serious about buying, we can find you something suitable. Monica looked at him, her face unreadable. I'll decide what's suitable for me. His cheeks flushed again. Of course, whatever you'd like. The shift in tone was obvious to everyone. Gone was the smugness, replaced with a clumsy attempt at politeness, but it wasn't respect. It was fear. Guilt. Monica picked up the Glock once more, turning it in her hands. The weapon hadn't changed, but the way the room looked at her holding it certainly had. Where they once saw a joke, now they saw capability. Where they once saw an outsider, now they saw authority. But for Monica, none of that mattered as much as the truth she'd carried all along. Her worth didn't hinge on their recognition. She had always known who she was. Holbrook finally addressed the room as a whole, his voice steady. Maybe next time, think before you open your mouth. You never know who's standing in front of you or what they've been through to get here. The words landed like a final verdict. The men nodded awkwardly, mumbling half-hearted agreements, but the shame on their faces said enough. Tom smiled faintly, nodding toward Monica. Seems to me you handled yourself just fine, even without backup. Monica gave a small smile in return. I've had practice. Holbrook chuckled softly, the tension easing just slightly, but he looked around one more time, making sure his message had sunk in. His eyes lingered on the clerk, who quickly busied himself stacking papers that didn't need stacking. For Monica, the room felt different now, not lighter, but clearer. The masks had been ripped off, the truth laid bare. She had walked in alone and been treated like she didn't belong. Now, standing tall with Holbrook at her side, she had reminded everyone exactly what belonging looked like. But the story wasn't finished yet. The aftermath of this moment would decide if the lesson truly stuck or if it would fade the second she walked out the door. The atmosphere in the store felt heavy, like everyone was waiting for someone else to make the first move. The clerk finally broke the silence, his voice stumbling. Sergeant, I owe you an apology. His words came slow, awkward, like dragging stones across the floor. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way. None of us should have. The taller man shifted uncomfortably, looking everywhere but at Monica. Yeah, we were out of line, the shorter one muttered. Didn't mean nothing by it. Just fooling around. Monica studied their faces. Their words sounded clumsy, but she could hear the cracks in them, the kind that came when shame set in. She wasn't interested in humiliating them further. She just wanted the truth to stick. She rested the Glock back on the counter and said quietly, You don't have to salute me. You don't have to thank me. But you do have to remember that every person who walks in here deserves respect, whether you know their story or not. Tom spoke up from the ammunition shelf again, his voice warm but firm. That's the part too many forget. Respect should be the starting point, not the prize you hand out after someone earns it. The men didn't respond. They didn't need to. The silence said enough. Holbrook nodded once, his arms crossing as he looked at them. You should be grateful you learned that lesson today. She had the patience to stand here and show you. Someone else might not have. The clerk swallowed hard. Understood. Monica took one last look around the room. For a second, she thought about her soldiers, the young recruits who once doubted her until they realized she was the one keeping them alive. She thought about her parents, who taught her that dignity wasn't something anyone could give or take away. Then she looked back at Holbrook. Thank you, she said softly. He shook his head. Don't thank me. I just said what needed to be said. You've been proving yourself since the day I met you. Her chest loosened a little at that. For the first time since walking through the door, she felt like she could breathe. Tom walked over, placing a small box of ammunition on the counter. On the house, he told her. For the next time you come in here when the air is not so heavy. Monica smiled faintly. I appreciate that. Holbrook gave her a respectful nod. Keep standing tall, Sergeant. You remind people like me why we wear the uniform. With that, he turned and headed for the door, his presence still filling the room even as he walked away. The clerk tried one last time to make it right. If you ever need anything from this store, you'll get it. No questions asked. Monica didn't reply. She didn't need to. She simply picked up her bag, walked past the racks of rifles and shelves of ammunition, and pushed open the glass door. The bell above her rang again, but this time the sound wasn't mocking, it was freedom. Outside, the late afternoon sun washed over her face. She closed her eyes for a second, letting the warmth sink in. The voices behind her were muffled now, fading into the background. What mattered was the truth that had been spoken, and the weight of it would stay with them long after she was gone. As she walked to her car, she thought about something Holbrook had said: respect should be the starting point. That was the lesson, not just for the clerk, not just for the two men by the counter, but for anyone who thought they had the right to judge someone before knowing their story. Monica opened her car door, slid inside, and gripped the steering wheel for a moment. She whispered to herself, almost like a prayer, never let them decide your worth. She started the engine and pulled out of the lot, the sun dipping lower behind her. The day had been long and heavy, but it had ended with truth laid bare. And truth had a way of lingering longer than mockery ever could. And that's the message I want you to carry with you. People are more than what you assume at first glance. Everyone has a story you don't see, battles they've fought that you'll never know. Don't wait until someone proves themselves to offer them respect. Lead with it. Give it freely. It costs nothing, but it changes everything. If Monica's story moved you, don't let it stop here. Share this with someone who needs the reminder. Respect people not because of what you see, but because of what you don't see. Because the truth is, the strongest people often carry their strength in silence until the world forces it out of them. So next time you meet someone, start with respect. You never know who you're really standing in front of.